Let me be the first to say happy holidays. Does that feel weird? Because we are into the holiday season right now. How many of you have Thanksgiving plans? See, you're into the holiday seasons, right? Because, question for you, how many of you actually have a Christmas tradition that you're going to do this weekend because either like after Thanksgiving and on that weekend, you go and put up your Christmas lights, or you go get your Christmas tree, or for some of you, you camp out in front of Walmart for 3 days and then Black Friday? How many of you do something related to Christmas over the Thanksgiving weekend? Raise your hand. See, y'all got issues. How many of you actually never took your Christmas lights down from last year? We're just going to shame you right here and right now. We're into the holidays, and that means two things, right? It means, one, relationships. Yeah, because there's nothing maybe more so about the holidays. Granted, Christmas, right? We're celebrating the birth of Christ, and I'm not saying that's not a part of it, but there's relationships involved with this. You're going to go and have dinner with people that maybe you haven't seen in a while, the in-laws or your extended family or some friends. And some of you might travel and go out of town to go visit some people. Some people might come to your place, and there's something about relationships that are so sweet during the holiday times. But there's a problem with the holidays, and you know what that is? Relationships. Oh, it's the same thing that's wonderful and terrifying over the holidays. It all depends on what kind of family you have. Because there's moments where family can be wonderful and warm and soothing and just refreshing to your soul. And there's moments where family, never mind. You know what I mean, right? They can either A, drive you crazy, or, it's just a reminder every year about how dysfunctional one family might be. And here's the truth. We get stressed at Christmas time. You've got a family budget that you know you're going to blow out, right? You've got shopping to do. You have all your work to do at work, and then on top of that, you have extra family events. You just keep adding stuff on top of stuff, you're going to get stressed. And when the holidays are about relationship, and then we multiply stress on top of that, we struggle to have healthy relationships over the holidays. So here's something that I'm going to do for the next 3 weeks. We just finished an 11-week series on grace. So like I said last week, no more grace for you, all right? We're going to talk about what it looks like to have some healthy relationships over the holidays. Because truth be told, people in this room, some of you aren't looking forward to the holidays. Because it's going to be different than it was last year. Maybe you lost someone this year. Maybe because the holidays are partly about the end of the year, and there's something about coming to December that you reflect on the rest of your year. And maybe it's just been a really bad year. And as you reflect on it, you're like, it's just been dark this year. And maybe you're just hopeful for the year to come. But for some of us, this could just be a really hard season. Your workplace. Some of you, your budgets are ending, and you're trying to end of the year sales. You're trying to project for the next year. Maybe it's crunch time at work. It gets stressful there. If life is all about relationships and we struggle to communicate when there is stress, here's what I want to do. We're going to spend 3 weeks talking about how do you and I actually communicate in moments where we are struggling to be known, struggling to communicate well. And let me give you a biblical premise for this here, okay? Right off the bat, here's the first thing. You and I, we need each other. I don't know if you know this, but you were hardwired and created to be in a community of people. God built you for relationships. I can prove it to you. It's really easy. God created the world, right? He creates space, water, animals, chihuahuas, whatever. He creates things. We're not sure about the chihuahuas. Could have been an act of the devil, right? Marilyn down here has a chihuahua with a picture of her bag on the front. She showed me, and so I'm just picking on her. And then God created man. And after everything that God created, he always said, it is good, it is good, it is good. And then God creates man and said, it is not good. Well, not the man part. It actually says, it is not good that man is alone. That's the one thing that God created that wasn't good. He just created one person. He's like, that just doesn't work. And by the way, it still just doesn't work. And so he creates woman. And man and woman come together. You were hardwired for community. He takes that man and woman, puts them in a family, more relationships. They put that family inside of a town. We gravitate towards villages and towns. We gravitate towards community. Why did you come here and gather here as a church today? Well, to worship God. You could have done that on your own. But you are hardwired for relationships and community. The truth is, we need each other. There's something inside, but the thing that we think is weird is when there's a person living in a cabin in the wilderness by themselves. We think about that and go, that's weird. And most of us, truth be told, most of us think, oh, that would be really nice right now. Get away from everybody. But after a day or two of that, we'd be looking around like, where are the people? Even the introverts would be looking around going, where are the people? You are hardwired for community. There's an interesting statement that this guy by the name of Solomon makes. He just writes it this way. He says, what a person desires is unfailing love. It's in Proverbs 19:22. Every single one of us, we want to be loved by people. Every single one of us, in relationship with people, when we're not loved, we feel the brokenness and the pain of that. And during the holidays, that's just intensified. Second thing, premise for this. You and I are actually better together when we are all contributing to the shared pool of meaning. What I mean by that is this. We're better together when we're actually all participating in something. And I know that sounds like the high school work project that you got put in English class to all work with each other. And myself, as well as you, probably hated that. Unless you got in the group with all really smart people and you're thinking, I don't have to do much here. Because they're all terrified that I'm going to get a really important assignment and they're going to get the grade that I would put forth, right? And you can just coast at that point, like they're actually going to do my work for me. But if you're the smart one in the group and you're looking at the other people in the group project, you're like, this would go way better if I could do it all by myself. How many of you have had that thought? Okay, absolutely. But the concept, there's this guy, he's a king of Israel. His name is Solomon, David's son. And God asked him, Solomon, I'm going to give you something. Anything you want. Solomon, tell me what you want. And he said this. He said, God, would you please give me wisdom? Because how can I be king? He's a little over 20 years old at this point. God, how can I, being so young, how can I lead these people who have so many issues? It's a loose translation. And God says, because you didn't ask for money, because you didn't ask for fame, I'm going to give you money, fame, and wisdom above anything I've gifted anyone else with. And Solomon, the wisest king that ever lived, you know what he wrote? Proverbs 11:14 says, for lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. He says this again. He says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. It's interesting. Solomon asks for wisdom. God gives him more wisdom than he's given anyone else. And what's the wisdom that God gave Solomon? Part of it was, Solomon, don't trust yourself. Solomon, you alone by yourself, it's not good. You need people around you to give you advice and wisdom that you can consult with them. Think about this. If the wisest person in all the world needed counsel, how much more do you and I, when we're at work, need other people who will speak into our projects, speak into our hopes? How much in our family do we need, if the wisest person who ever lived said you need advisors, you need counsel, how many of us in our own families need our wives and our husbands to participate with us in guiding our family, in raising our kids? Because if your home is a dictatorship, I'm just saying, that is not the home that God hardwired you for. He hardwired us for community, where we'd love each other, encourage each other, participate together. That's what I mean by the shared pool of meaning. That when we all jump in together to do something, whether it be church life together, that's why we do community groups. I think you will grow faster and better when you're in a community group of people. I will never stop beating that drum at this church. But I realize this, there's a lot of people who struggle with that. Because being in community is difficult. It's not always easy. There's one thing that hijacks families. There's one thing that hijacks your work group, your department, your business. There's one thing that hijacks churches, and it's this. It's conflict. Because you were hardwired to be with people. But the problem is, with being with people, you know what the problem is? It's that you have to be with people. People like you and people like me, who are kind of a little quirky. That's a generous term. A little broken. A little messed up. a little irritable, a little irrational. And God says, welcome to my family. It's like we're supposed to participate that in work, at church, in your own personal family. But I think the problem's different. I don't think it's just experiencing conflict with each other. Here's the real problem. It's not just conflict. It's how we handle the conflict is the real issue. And that's what I want to get into. I want to talk for a couple weeks about how you and I have these conflicts, or if you don't do conflicts, okay, you can do emotionally tense situations, okay? Because maybe you don't have conflict with anyone, you're just agreeable all the time. I want to give a name to this. Instead of calling them tensions or conflicts, I want to call them crucial conversations. I'm stealing this from a team of guys who wrote a book. 4 guys wrote a book. One of them was Joseph Grenny. He writes a book called Crucial Conversations. And let me define it this way. Here's how they define it in this book. The first is this. There are opposing opinions. When you're in a conversation at your family, your workplace, your business, your community group, and somebody has a different opinion than you, it could be an opportunity for like a crucial conversation, but you'd also have to have 2 other parts. You'd also have to have strong emotions, meaning somehow in the midst of this conversation, you got emotionally involved in it. Like, this is kind of sounding personal right now. They not only are opposing my viewpoint, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way when they're doing that. And the third thing down there is that the stakes are high. Hit me, Carmen, twice. Boom. Strong emotions, and also the next one, that the stakes are high. Meaning you're actually talking about something that matters. Can I ask you this? What did your last argument, what was the topic of it? I mean, what was it actually about? What was the catalyst, the thing that ignited it? If I went through all the arguments or discussions that my wife and I have ever had, and we just started writing down, how did that start? How to bake a chicken is one of them. How to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is another one. What was left out and should have been put away is another one. I mean, I'm not unique in this, right? We argue about dumb stuff. But some of those turned into 3-day discussions. Why? Because that might have been the catalyst, but it turned into, you didn't respect me. I don't think you love me. Whoa, we're talking about how to bake a chicken. No. It's now about something else. It's funny, when you start looking at crucial conversations, when someone opposes you, and then you have strong emotions about it, and it actually matters. It's a significant conversation. It matters to you. It's not just a conflict. It's a moment to have a crucial conversation with somebody else. And so here's what I want to do. I want to talk for 3 weeks on how do we have these crucial conversations, because what I think needs to happen, you might want to have better conversations, so you can not only tell the truth, but actually preserve the relationship at the same time. But the problem is, you can want that all you want, but if you don't have the skill to pull it off, you're not going to do it. And here's what I mean. Go to the next picture, Carmen. There's a diagram in your notes there. I want you to take a look at this real quick. There's highs and lows on this. Bottom left, there's the low. Low skill, and as you move to the right, there's high skill. That means you're able to have a conversation with someone that is a crucial conversation. Emotions are running high. You definitely have differences of opinion. What you're talking about deeply matters. It's not about baking a chicken, right? And then there's desire. Like, you might have low desire. Like, I really don't care how we handle this. I'm just out of this conversation. Like, you just really don't care about how you handle a crucial conversation. But then there's high desire. You know, there's 4 boxes there. The first one, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, if you have low desire to handle those conversations well, you really don't care about the relationship, and you actually have low skill, we're just going to call those people lazy and uncaring. They're not in the room right now, I'm just saying. I mean, if you don't care about how you treat people, and if you don't have any skill to do it well, you're just lazy, all right? You just really don't care. Now, if you move to the right, and you actually have high skill about not how to manipulate people to agree with you, but you have high skill so that they sense that you care about them. And you're able to say, I know I have strong emotions right now, but I'm actually going to be rational at the same time. And you have that ability, but you have no desire to exercise that at all. You're just mean. This is a very scientific diagram up here. Research has been done on this. You're just mean. If you can do it and you don't, you're just mean. Now, We'll get to the upper left-hand quadrant now. You have high desire. I want them to know that I love them and I want to handle this well. And I have just a deep desire to have great, crucial conversations with people so that we both walk out of there feeling good, but we have very low skill. You know what we call those people? We call them family. We call them friends. And we call them church. Ooh. Because this is where most of us reside. This is where I've lived for a long time. High desire, I want my wife to know that I love her, that she feels loved by me. Not only that, but I want her to feel like her opinion, I said that wrong. I don't want her to feel like her opinion matters, because what that means is I just have to say things so she'll feel that. I want her to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is room in our marriage for her opinion. That's different. I want my 2 kids to know that their dad created space for them in our family where they can speak their mind, that we can even have differing opinions and talk about those in crucial conversations. I have a deep desire for that. I want to be a part of a church staff where we can say anything to anyone and be like, let me speak into that with you. And we can actually tell the truth, that we're not just polite to each other. I have a deep desire for that. I want this church community to be a place where we can tell each other the truth and we can experience relationship that is transparent and real with one another. But the truth of the matter is, most of us are low on the skill to pull that off. So what do you call someone who actually has this really high desire to make that happen and has really high skill to make it happen? We call that person rare. In my experience, there's just not a lot of them around. Here's the good news, though. I've been on staff at different churches for more than 20 years. I've been blessed enough where I've been able to do long terms at churches. And so I've worked for only 3 churches in the last 20 plus years of being a pastor. And the good news is that all the churches I've been a part of, they've all gotten progressively better at handling crucial conversations. The first church I worked at, they were absolutely horrible at crucial conversations. The next church I worked at, they actually improved drastically, and they were only terrible at them. And then I moved to this church, and we're just really bad at them. There's great progress happening. But the truth is, if you're like me, we don't handle these conversations well. There's something in our brains, in our bodies physiologically, that when we get upset or it gets personal or someone, it not just opposes our opinion, but they oppose us. We get offended. And all of a sudden, the room gets hotter. Temperature didn't change, but you did. And we take it personally. And somehow our emotions hijack our brain, and it's really hard to have these conversations. You know what part of it is, just physiologically? Here's the crucial conversations, why they're difficult. It's in your notes there. One is this. Our adrenaline kicks in and overrides our brains. You know why we have adrenaline, right? If you're ever threatened and a saber-toothed tiger is after you, you blood and adrenaline flows in your system. Your legs are empowered and your arms are empowered to do one of 2 things. You're either going to fight and you're going to have extra strength and energy to do it, or you're going to run and have extra strength and energy to do it, right? If all that blood flows there, where's it moving away from? You and I get dumber in those moments. So that crucial moment where adrenaline starts flowing and all of a sudden the conversation and internally, you're trying to be calm on the outside, but inside it's like you're fired up. You all know what I'm talking about, right? All the married couples said, amen? Okay. Just keeping it real here. But yet I'm supposed to be rational. Your body works against you sometimes. The other reason is this, is we get surprised by crucial conversations. You know, if you're walking into one, you've thought it through, you've prayed over it, you've had this moment of clarity, here's what I'm going to say, and when they respond this way, these are my words of grace that I'm going to extend to them, right? But if you've ever been caught off guard, have you ever had a conversation with your spouse, and you thought you're talking about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but it was actually a conversation about respect and valuing the other person's opinion, and all of a sudden you're in a crucial conversation, you got blindsided by it? We get surprised by these at work. You thought you were just talking about some of their work and your opinion differed, and all of a sudden they took it personally. And maybe you weren't worked up in it, but they had entered a crucial conversation. I don't think we have a lot of great examples of how to handle these well. I mean, if you made a list of people that you think, man, they handle crucial conversations really well, even when the other person is worked up, they're able to not just be soothing and calming. They're not there to pacify the person. They're actually trying to accomplish something together. They're not only able to speak the truth, but they do it in a way that that person senses that they're loved. How many people show up on your list? My list is short. How long is your list of people that you know that don't get this right? I don't know about you, but my list is long, and I don't think I'm a pessimist on this. Let me give you one other reason. We believe that crucial conversations are tough. We believe this myth that we need to choose between the relationship or the truth. Like, if I tell them the truth, it's going to harm our relationship. And I'm going to actually choose the relationship, and I'm either going to lie to them or not say anything to them. That's what I'm going to choose to do. Do this in your Bibles right now. Open up to the book of Colossians. Let me just show you something real quick. Colossians chapter 3. Paul is writing this letter to the church at Colossus, and it's interesting, the topic of conversation. By the way, make note of this. Every epistle, you know what that word means? It means letter, not like a letter or B letter, but it's a written letter. An epistle is just a written letter. Every single letter that is written to a church from 2,000 years ago, every single letter is a crucial conversation. Think about it in terms of the correction that Paul gives a church. He's writing to them and saying, hey, I have an opposing viewpoint that you have. And he's like, mine's actually biblical. This letter's going to be in the Bible. Just saying. And I said, I know you oppose it. He writes with some strong emotion, particularly in the book of Galatians. Lots of emotion. 2 Corinthians, filled with strong opinions and emotion. About stuff that greatly matters. Yeah, it matters so much so that God had his letters put in the scriptures. And he writes this one church, and he says this, chapter 3, verse 5, he says this, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. And by the way, here's what belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. Now get this. They would receive these letters from Paul and be like, hey, Paul wrote us. We're going to get together. And in the group, they would meet in their church service. They would read this letter from Paul. Can you imagine reading this letter from Paul? They're all getting around, and Paul's like, hey, here's what you need to do next. I need you to put to death whatever belongs to your earthly nature. And I know what belongs to your earthly nature. That was sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. And can you imagine the people in the room that start looking at each other? He's talking about you. And Paul says, by the way, that's not enough. Those are kind of some big ones, but let me give you a more refined list. Verse 8. But now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. He's like, hey, once you get rid of those first ones, let me give you another list that'll refine you even more. And then he writes this. It's different than the first two lists, and he calls this one thing out because he knows that the minute that you're in a community group of people like a church, and you're talking about what the things you need to get rid of are and the lifestyle of Christ that Paul wants you to adopt, he knows this one thing's going to happen in every church. So he writes this, verse 9. Do not lie to each other, since you've taken off your old self with his practices. You know, it's hard to be transparent with your family, but the truth is they already know you. It's hard to be transparent at work because you want to keep it professional. The hardest place of being transparent is probably at church, because it has this air of, I need to be acceptable. I need to have this kind of persona of I'm spiritual to some degree, and if people really knew who I was, maybe they wouldn't like me, because there's areas of me that really aren't much like Christ. And I think church sometimes is the hardest place to be really, really authentic, and Paul knew that, and he says this: just don't lie to each other. See, the goal of a crucial conversation is to be 100% honest and 100% respectful. Do we do that? You're in a community group with other believers, and they're sharing about their life, and you're like, you know, I think you're sharing this to ask our opinion, and either you're theologically really inaccurate about what you're saying, or maybe they're sharing something about their life that you go, wow, that's really busted and broken. But yet, majority of us will avoid telling the truth because we don't want to offend. We're not 100% honest. And those of us that, if you get into a personal relationship with somebody, and they do something offensive, it's like, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to say anything. Then we explode with the truth. And it's 100% honest and about 30% respectful. We struggle to have crucial conversations, and I think Paul understands this and just says, in your relationship with people, particularly in the church, don't lie to each other. Be honest. But if we don't have the skills for crucial conversations, we could have all this desire and so little skill that we're ineffective. So I want to talk about the skills. Two more things that are why we struggle to have the crucial conversations. We have a tendency to respond in either silence or violence. I'm going to describe this in just a minute. But we either run away, silence. We might not physically run away, but the silence is emotionally retreating. And the violence doesn't mean that we're there to fight. It means that we might get verbally argumentative over it. That's how majority of us respond, silence or violence. And here's the other thing. If you've walked into just a whole mess of emotional turmoil with somebody, most of us, we don't even know where to start sorting it all out. I say all this to tell you this. Having crucial conversations is really, really hard. You might be really good at it. I'm not. And so one of the reasons I've been doing this is I've been doing research for myself about how to get better at this. Because I want my wife to feel it. I want my kids to know that there's a place where I value them and love them and want to hear them. I want my board to know this. I want my staff to know this. I want our church to know this, that we can have crucial conversations together and handle them well. What would it look like for you at your place of work if you actually did this? How many of your bosses, you actually feel like you could go to them and tell them the truth? I'll just tell you this. There's moments at church where some people, they don't even feel like they can come to their pastor and tell them the truth. Now, let me take a quick time out here because I know what some of you are thinking, because I already told you Crucial Conversations is a book. The speaker spoke at the Leadership Summit. Some of you are wondering this question. I think I got 3 questions here. I'm going to answer them for you because I think you're thinking this right now, okay? The first question is, Pastor, are you going to be teaching concepts from a book that isn't the Bible? Answer, yes. Question number 2, why would you do that? Here's what I'm going to do. The concepts that I always teach are biblical, meaning this, we're a Bible teaching church. I believe that this is the written, divinely inspired Word of God. This thing speaks far more powerfully and effectively than any book does. And I will approach it from the scriptures, but here's what I don't want to do. If I'm talking to you about crucial conversations, I don't want to talk about their 7 principles and feel like at every corner I have to say, now here's a verse that supports that. I'm not going to roll that way. I've looked at this. I believe that it's not a Christian book, but there's definitely Christian principles in here. And you're smart enough to look at the scriptures too and say, you know what, I want to take a look at this for myself, and I would encourage you to do that. Third question, Pastor, why would you teach us a book that we can read for ourselves? Because you ain't ever going to read it. You're laughing, but you probably read 30% of the books you read on your shelf, and that may be generous. I got a whole third of a library sitting in my office right now that I've never read, but it doesn't stop me from buying books, right? So now you don't have to read this one after these 3 weeks. The biblical principles for crucial conversations is this. You and I were hardwired for relationships. Well, you and I were hardwired to be in community. We're actually better and wiser together. But the problem with being with people is actually being with people. And so we struggle to do that. And so here's what I want to do. I want to help us understand what it looks like to have crucial conversations. I had one this last week. I actually had this crucial conversation in a staff meeting. Because what I had done, I had this plan. I thought through it. I wasn't kind of shooting from the hip. I walked into a staff meeting and said, I've got this idea. We're actually gonna vote on some bylaw and constitution modifications as a church. There's some things about our constitution and bylaws. By the way, if you ever want to start a fabulous meeting, that's how to start it right there. We're gonna vote on a bylaw and constitution change. I'll get back to that in just a minute. But I said, I also want to do this. I've wanted to for months and a year now, let's create a volunteer appreciation night where anybody who serves at the church, let's throw a party and just serve our volunteers and just love on them. And I was but I've also wanted to do a vision night where we kind of cast vision for where we're going. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. My plan is the first Wednesday night prayer, because the first Wednesday night of every month we do this prayer night, we're going to make a great dinner and bring all of our volunteers and do a volunteer appreciation night. And we're going to do some vision casting there, and we're going to vote for this Constitution and bylaw changes. And somebody said, well, why would I go to that? I was like, I just gave you 3 reasons. They're like, it's not actually very compelling. Like, well, by the way, if members are supposed to be there to vote for bylaw changes, what if they're not a volunteer? Do they eat the same food, or do we serve the volunteers better food and not good food to non-volunteers? I mean, how do you do that? And I could feel it as I was sharing this with them and getting feedback that I had asked for. My body was doing this. And Pastor Josh, high school and community group pastor, he said, I can tell you don't want to hear this, but, and he went on to say something else, and I was like, oh. What I was showing him, I hadn't said a word, but what I was showing him was that I didn't want to listen to what they were saying. I brought it to them for their input, and I didn't realize my body language, my posture was saying, y'all don't get it. Like, I just need to explain this more to you so that you can recognize what a great idea this is. But my communication to them was, I don't really care what you guys think. We should do this anyways. So if you remember one thing about any of this, just remember this. I wanted to throw you a party, and they wouldn't let me. Just saying. Here's the truth. Pastor Josh, as well as all of our other staff, they actually saved me and saved you from a train wreck of an event. Because how do you try to accomplish 3 things at once? Well, in my mind, you can, because I'm totally optimistic. I'm foolishly optimistic. I think I can preach 20 pages of notes in 35 minutes. I just got to talk faster. That's actually dumb. But it's not stopping me from trying it right now. The truth is this, is if it was unclear around a staff meeting table, could you imagine that announcement from up front? It's going to be totally muddy in the seats when you hear that. And so here's what we did. We decided, okay, well, we need to have a bylaw and constitution vote change meeting, a special business meeting. And then we're going to do a volunteer appreciation night in January. Just remember, I want to throw you a party earlier, but they said, we'll wait till January, okay? I went with the team. But they actually separated it out, and I was better, and you are the beneficiaries of me having a staff that can tell the truth to their boss. But I was in a crucial conversation, and I needed to look at myself and go, how am I actually acting right now? Because they're reading my body language. By the way, I need a 2-minute commercial right here. Ready? I apologize for this, but we're going to do it anyways. I just told you that we're going to vote to modify Constitution and bylaws. There's actually 2 small things that we're changing. We're going to have that meeting December 7th, 2 weeks from today, here at the church, right after the second service. It'll take about 5 to 7 minutes. Not a big thing, but according to our bylaws, I need to notify you of that. So that's what we're doing. We're voting on 2 things. There's information at the info booth. You can get that, take it home, read it. You'll know everything that it's about, okay? It's simple. I'll just tell you the 2 things. The first one is this. We currently, in our Constitution and bylaws, I can't hire a staff person, either full or part-time, at ACS or for Church on the Hill. ACS is our Christian school, or for our church, if she's married to an elder. And I can't bring an elder on our board if he's married to a part-time or full-time staff person at either Achiever Christian School or our church. And we just kind of came to this conviction as a board that, you know what, we want to hire people who are gifted and called by God for ministry. And we want elders on our board who are gifted and called by God to do that. And I know the big issue is, well, what if there's a conflict of interest on the board? Like, how do you do? You have a policy about how you handle conflicts of interest that aren't in your constitution, but in your handbook. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to open up the eligibility for people to come on the board as elders, as well as hiring people who might be eligible and gifted by God to do this. And so we're going to vote on that. The other is, when we rewrote our bylaws a couple years ago, I think it was an oversight, we forgot to articulate that when we bring a new elder up to vote on at the end of a year, at the end of the year, beginning in January, we forgot to say that the board needs to approve any candidates that we present to you. And so we're making that change as well. So take a look at that. If you're a member, you get to vote on that. Everyone else who doesn't care about that, now check back in with me, okay? Now we're going to get back into the message, okay? See, even church has commercials sometimes. I don't know where I was going with that. You all just wanted like TiVo, like fast forward me, huh? So, staff meeting this last week. I'm back to slumping in my chair, recognizing this moment that we're in a crucial conversation, and here's what I did. I was trying to do what I've been studying and learning, and principle number one is this: start with your heart. Here's what you have to do. In that moment, you better look at yourself in the mirror, figuratively speaking. You got to look at yourself and go, what am I doing right now? I mean, in my heart, the thing that I want is I want to have an open staff. I want to collaborate about things. And I don't want it to just be, this is what we say, but this is what we do. Do you get that? Because what Josh was asking me was this: do you really want to hear us? Do you really want to value what it is that we're saying? And deep inside, I'm screaming, yes, yes, yes. But my face is saying, oh, this is painful. Because sometimes it's hard to hear the truth about an idea that you just presented, even when it's a bad idea. And so I had to do this. If you look at your notes, you got to start with your heart. And you can do it by asking 3 questions. The first is this: what do you really want? It's a great question in your marriage. What kind of marriage do you want to have? Specific to this situation, what do you want the outcome to be? Then you ask the second question: what do you not want? What kind of a marriage do you want to avoid and not have? In this specific situation, what do you not want to have happen? We're going to talk about how to articulate that later on, but that's really interesting. If you can answer those 2 questions, what do you want and what do you not want? It's about you. Start with you. Because most of the time, we always start with the other person, right? Because in that crucial conversation, they're speaking, and you're not actually listening to what it is that they're saying. You're actually thinking about what you're going to say next. Am I right or not? We're processing that stuff. And we're only halfway listening. So stop for a minute. Ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I not want? And then just ask yourself this: how do I need to behave in such a way to get what I really want? And be careful. It's not meant to be manipulation, like, oh, so I have to do this to get what I really want. I'm assuming what you want is wholesome and godly, right? God, even if we don't agree, I want us to be on the team still. I want my wife to know that she's loved and cared for, and her opinion is valued and respected. How do I behave so that she gets that? I want my kids to know that even though they're 13 and 15, that their opinions deeply matter. Because if I disregard their opinions, they're going to become 16 and 17 and disregard my opinion. How do I do that on a staff? Is it just the on-paper culture that we collaborate, but the reality is it's a dictatorship? I don't care whether your workplace or your family life is a dictatorship. It wasn't meant to be that way. My family is not a democracy either. Neither is this place. We all just don't vote. I mean, we have people who are in charge of stuff, right? We have leaders. In that discussion last week, yeah, I was going to make the call on whether we did that or not. But I valued that enough to go, man, you guys just saved me. Thank you for not letting me do something dumb at the church. Second thing, principle number 2 is this: you need to learn to look. Once you look internally, then you got to look out here. And you got to figure out, are they actually in a crucial conversation right now? And you'll know 2 ways. They either went violent or silent. And violent, I don't mean they like, Josh came across the table at me like, oh, I'm going to get you. I mean this. Here's just some descriptors. The volume in the room just went up. You know when you entered a crucial conversation sometimes because, boom, it got loud. It might have gotten animated. The discussion might have gone from, let me share an idea with you, to trying to monopolize the discussion, controlling the conversation. It might have degraded into coercing. I'm going to tell you that idea again because it's really a good idea, and you just must have misunderstood it. Because if you truly understood what I was trying to say, you would realize how smart I really am. We laugh at it, but we act like this. And if that doesn't work, sometimes we just label people. You know what? You're just old school. You don't want to do anything new. We label people as, you know what? You're never going to get it. We label people as, you just play devil's advocate all the time. If that doesn't work, it just gets personal and we start attacking people. If it doesn't go violent, it might just get silent. But the reality is, whether it's violent or silent, you're still in a crucial conversation. Silence is this. You know, in that moment, in that meeting, where all of a sudden you said something and somebody opposed you and you responded back, and then you could tell everybody just shut down. See, here's the deal. When you're looking at someone else, well, you're trying to figure out, are they in a crucial conversation at the moment? And if you're like me, you don't recognize it all the time because you think the silence that just came up was just another great opportunity for you to share your idea again. And the awkward silence was them retreating and running away, saying, I'm not being heard, I'm not being valued. Here's another silence. They're actually silencing the truth. They might still be talking, but they're masking the truth and not being transparent with you. Well, Pastor, that sounds like a wonderful idea. I hope you have a great time pulling off that vision, volunteer appreciation, Constitution night. It sounds interesting. And they're not willing to have the guts to say, nah, it sounds just a bad idea. The other is you just watch people withdraw from the conversation. So here's all I'm doing today. I wanted to give you an introduction to this crucial conversations to ask, are you in these right now? Do you have some that you can recognize and look back on right now and you haven't handled well? Can I have you write down two things? The people in your family, in your workplace, they need you to ask these two questions. Do you care about them? It deeply matters. I mean, do you care about your family? I know the obvious answer is yes, but do you really? Your workplace. Do you care about those people? Because if they're just a means to an end, the crucial conversation isn't going to go well. If they're just a resource to you, not only that, but a replaceable resource, that conversation is not going to go well. People will smell that out every time. Do you care about them? And here's the second thing. Do you care about their goals or just your own? Do you care about what's important to your 15-year-old daughter, or do you just care about what's important to you? That can be hard. Do you care about what your spouse, what their goals are, what their opinions are, what their perspective is? And not talking to them in a way so that they feel valued, but to truly internally value them. Those two questions are going to get us started in this series. To say, do we really care about those people? And do we really care about their goals and opinions and perspectives? And I just want you to answer that this week. And we're going to jump into more of the skill development of this in the following week. But the truth is, life is about relationships. And when Jesus was asked that question, he said, here's the two most important things. Love God and love your neighbor. Somebody asked him, who's your neighbor? And he tells the story about how this Samaritan was a hero because he loved a Jewish man and served him well. You know what that means? It means life is about relationships with God and with each other. And I just don't want to believe that myth that we have to choose between the relationship and the truth. What would it look like to be a part of a community group of 10 to 16 people who told the truth but did it in such a respectful way? What would it look like to be a part of a church living in a valley that's not very transparent with each other, where you had authentic community together, where we told the truth, but we were very respectful in how we did it? I think all of us are hungering for those kinds of relationships. And I think we have the desire to do it. What I'm questioning is whether we have the skill to. So I hope you'll dig in to improve our skills. Let's pray.